And my name is Michelle Storms. I'm the Executive Director of the ACLU of Washington, and I'm really excited to be here with you this evening. I've just been in this role since January, but I've been with the ACLU before, so I've been out here earlier when we did our very first Flights and Rights in Spokane. This is our fourth one. And I was here the first time, and I remember that a lot of people said, please come back. So we've been back 3 more times since then, so I want you to give yourselves a hand and give us a hand for just being in this fight for justice and equity together. I'm really excited to be leading the ACLU of Washington in any time, and particularly in these times. And there's so many things that we are working on and wanting to just make sure that the country's promises of freedom and justice are real for all people, and that all people who are here can exercise their rights, regardless of their gender, their sexual orientation, their race, their ethnic status, where they come from. These are the things that matter to us. People are people, they have dignity, and they have rights, and that's what we stand up for. So we thank you for joining with us in that fight. In working together, we really can make our communities better and more welcoming and better. Oh, there's that. Let's keep using this one right now. Okay, so before I really get into the meat of our event, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Spokane tribe and to acknowledge that we're able to have events here because our country occupied native land, and the First Peoples, this is their land, they were the stewards of this land, and we owe much back to them in terms even of maintaining the promises of this country to the First People. So as I mentioned, this is our 4th time here in visiting Spokane. And I want to tell you that you are really welcome at any time to, if anything we say or do makes you feel excited or happy, to cheer or snap or clap and let you know that you're feeling excited and invigorated, because thank you, because I feel excited. I feel excited about civil rights and civil liberties and working toward it. And it's the soul, fighting for the soul of our country, defending immigrant rights, protecting privacy, addressing surveillance, making sure that every student is able to succeed. In fact, we have a really big project based in Spokane where we have a staff member out here. So our main office is in Seattle, but we do have a staff member in Spokane, Nikki Lockwood, who I think will be here later, and works with the Every Student Council Alliance. And it's really about justice and equity for students in school, and making sure that students aren't being suspended when really they should just be getting alternatives so that they can be able to successfully fulfill their education. Yes?
And maybe he's running for school board.
So that leadership is vital. It's really exciting to see a community be energized and to be engaged in making the community a better place, and we feel that way about Nikki. We adore her. She's done amazing work here with the ACLU. So one thing I want to share with you is a really big victory that happened in the legislative session this year. And our very first Flights and Rights, when we first came out to Spokane, we talked about immigrant rights. And actually 2 of our 4 presentations have been on that topic, because there's been a lot happening in your community on that issue, as many of you know. I see lots of you nodding. And today, just today, the Governor Inslee signed the Keep Washington Working Act. Yes. The ACLU of Washington worked so hard with a really huge coalition of many, many different kinds of organizations to get that law passed. And it was actually, as one of my colleagues says, about a 9-year labor of love to get that thing done. They've been introducing it in various different forms over many years. But a couple of the things that it does is it really very affirmatively, by law, makes it the case that jails cannot collaborate with immigration and customs enforcement and turning people over. We have a lot of problems with, and it does the same with police, with law enforcement, whether it's with sheriff's departments or police, local law enforcement, whatever. So this is really huge. It does a lot more other things that are amazing, but those are a couple key things. And we've actually had a number of lawsuits around the state on those issues directly because of that illegal and inappropriate collaboration with immigration enforcement. So we're excited to have that law passed today. lots of other good stuff we worked on in the past too, but I'm not going to give you that whole rundown. You can see our website, and we're going to be talking about voting rights, so you'll get a chance to hear about some of why that's exciting for us. So we are not live streaming, is that correct?
No, we are.
We are. Oh, hello, audience. Okay, I just had a note in here that said we are, but I wasn't sure if we were or not. So we are live streaming, so if you want to make your friends jealous that they're not here and you're on social media and want to use the hashtag ACLU Flights, you can let them know that you're here and that they can watch. So there's that. I also want to thank the McGinnity Room. This is our 4th time here with the McGinnity Room. We love this beautiful space, so let's have a cheer for the McGinnity Room. They have hosted us every time. They are just a delightful partner with us, so we appreciate it. And then finally, as many of you saw me running around the room a little while ago, we have the raffle. If you did get a chance to fill out one of those little blue cards, please do drop it in the blue bucket. We'll pull a raffle winner at the end of the evening. Must be present to win. But you'll get some delightful ACLU swag. So that will happen. Okay, the other thing I want to say, just a couple more preliminary comments, is so membership and current events, things that are going on that we want you to know about. So some of you are probably already members of the ACLU. Anybody want to say that they are? Hopefully some. Oh yes, thank you. We love that. It's easy to be a member. It's easy and it's cheap. And you can do it on your phone by going to the ACLU.org website. And the reason why that's important to us and to you is you're joining a network of like-minded souls who share your values about justice and rights for people. And when you sign up, you will get not an inordinate amount of emails, I promise you that, but you'll get opportunities to know about events happening in your community. You'll get the opportunity to know, particularly during legislative session, or if there's something happening with your local Spokane City Council that we're working on as well. We'll let you know that's happening and give you the opportunity to have information if you want to write to your legislators or to your council people or so forth. So that's one of the many reasons why that's great to have. We've had, just in the past 2 years, more than 219 different legal actions, more than that, against the current presidential administration. Not because we are not a partisan organization. We have held every president accountable for their failure to uphold the civil rights and civil liberties of human beings in this country for 100 years. Honestly, this president has put forward more threats than usual, and as a result, we've had that many lawsuits. Many of them have been in the immigrant right context, but they've also been government accountability and transparency, reproductive rights, LGBTQI issues, voting rights, racial justice, free speech, and using religion to discriminate. So our work really spans everything from that litigation, but also, as I've referenced the legislation, it's also with lawmakers, and it's also at the ballot box. We were involved with I-940 last year, which many of you may have voted for. So anyway, those are the things that we've been up to, and even though often these are really huge battles, when you're fighting for immigrant rights or police accountability or a woman's right to autonomy, or an individual's right to express their gender identity, it's still the right work to be doing. And one of the big issues that we have worked with throughout our history as the ACLU relates to the right to vote and addressing barriers to voting and ensuring that you have a meaningful access and ability to participate in democracy, because at its root, what democracy is participation. So this year, we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the passage of the Voting Rights Restoration Act. And that is a law that restores the right to vote for people leaving the criminal justice system. So in this state, oh, there's Nikki Lockwood. We were talking about you earlier. Say hi, Nikki. So glad to have you as a part of our team out here in Spokane. So anyway, so the 10-year anniversary of the Voting Rights Restoration Act. In many states, if you've been incarcerated, you've lost the right to vote forever. In just 2 states, you still have the right to vote even while you're still incarcerated. And I'd love for us to be one of those states too. But right now, what we do have is the ability for you, once you are back in civil society, to be able to vote. And so that was a huge victory. So we're going to talk about that and many other things about voting and I'll introduce our speaker in a moment. And we'll also be joined by a couple of local representatives from the Access for All Spokane and the Spokane Public Library, who will also share some of the perspectives they have about challenges to voting and the work that they're doing to defend the right to vote in Washington State. So voting matters. It really matters. Like I said, democracy is participation, and it's not just every 4 years when we've got a presidential election. It's those local city and county elections. It's those school levies. It's all of those things. All of those things make a difference for the quality of life of each one of us participating in the communities that we live in. And that's why it is so very important. So let me get into our main speaker, who has done some fabulous work for voting rights in the ACLU of Washington. So that is our staff attorney, Breanne Schuster. And she will come and speak. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. She'll come and speak, and then we'll be joined by our friends from Access for All and the Spokane Public Library. So before coming to the ACLU of Washington, Breanne, she came in 2015, and before that she went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, spent a year working and learning French in Brussels, and then graduated from the Seattle University of Law. During law school, she was the executive editor of the Seattle Journal for Social Justice. She volunteered with the Homeless Rights Advocacy Project and also interned with the ACLU of Washington. She worked with the Alliance for a Just Society, with Disability Rights Washington, and public defender organizations. You kind of get the feeling that she's dedicated to the public interest. So that is wonderful. Despite all of that hard work for justice, in her free time, she dances, paints, cooks, sings, hikes, bikes, runs, and reads. So please join me in welcoming Breanne Schuster. Justice and style. Okay, getting her set up here.
So I'm actually going to open with a pop quiz. No judgment from me, I promise. We're going to agree that we're not going to judge each other. But how many of you get your ballot and it is like the highlight of your year, right? Like you are so excited to take that pen out, rip open the envelope, mail it in. You can raise your hand. Wow, that's like actually 3 times as many people as normally raise their hands when asked that question. Right, so let's talk about that. I feel like that too, right? I get my ballot half the time. I don't even know what's coming. It's a special election in like February, April, and I open it and I think I see money. I'm supposed to. This sounds good, but I don't really know. How do I find out more information about this? Sometimes I'm excited about the people that are on the ballot, and I'm like really jazzed to vote for someone. And other times it's like some court commissioner number 7 that I don't even know what that position does. I don't know who the person is running, and they're probably running on that post, and maybe I'm not super excited either way, right, about the position. So let's unpack a little bit like why that is, because for me, the reason that, when I get that ballot and that lack of enthusiasm is why I actually care so much about voting rights, right? Because if we had a system that cared and ensured that all of us had our voices heard and the right to have our voices heard and the right for those voices to count equally, I think those ballots would look a lot different. And I think we'd care a lot more. And we'd be a lot more enthusiastic when we open those ballots. So when I think about unfortunately, right, that's just not the system that we live in right now. So when I think of barriers to voting, I kind of think about it in 3 big buckets. And barriers I use as a broad term that might not be, always the proper term, but I think of first laws that say who can and cannot vote, right? So we have laws that say you have to be 18 to vote, you have to be a citizen to vote, you have to live in a certain place for a certain amount of time. Then we have a second bucket of laws about how you get to vote, how you get to access the ballot, right? So you have to register, what are the requirements to register? You have to, in some states, vote in person versus turning it in by mail. Do you get the stamp on that ballot? How do you have to fill out that ballot? Do you have to sign with your own signature? What are kind of the impediments or registration requirements to just actually cast that vote. And the third bucket of things that make it difficult for people to have their voices heard is the way that our election systems are structured, right? So we have kind of nationally, what's drawn a lot of attention in recent years is gerrymandering, certainly, but in Washington, and what's really kind of unique to this state is we have a ton of at-large election systems. So you, congratulations, Spokane, actually have kind of a district-based system, but in most cases in Washington, most cities and counties do not have that type of election system. So I am going to talk about a couple things that we as the ACLU have been working on to kind of dismantle those barriers, and I'm also hoping to open up to Dave and Rae Lynn to talk about some of the things that they've seen impacting their communities and the communities that they work with. And we'll kind of end on like what's really exciting though that's getting us and moving us forward. So if anyone had to guess, let's talk first about the single largest factor constraining U.S. voter participation in the United States. Does anyone know what that is? Okay.
If you just don't register.
Oh, all right. Any other guesses? Property. Okay.
Address, like you don't have proof of address.
Any last words?
Lack of understanding, be able to interpret the ballot.
Not in Washington, and there's lines, there's lack of polling places and other. That show you guys yeah, and poll, I mean, you know, we don't have to pay for postage anymore, but you can look at that as a small thing.
Yeah, and even though we used to not have to pay for it, people didn't know that, right? It wasn't very clear. Anyone else?
Just the ability to get to a polling place.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily everybody, but
Yeah, and no, that's very real, and I'm super excited to talk about some developments. Oh, sorry, Michelle just reminded me, no one can hear you but me, so sorry. I will be sure to repeat in the future, sorry about that. So those are all very real, right? But one of the single greatest factors in the US preventing people from being able to vote is actually a felony conviction. So over 6 million people currently in the United States, a felony conviction. So over 6 million people in this country, 75% of whom aren't even in jail or prison anymore, right, are no longer able to access the ballot. And as Michelle kind of alluded to earlier, right, that is in 10 states, you never get your right to vote at all. In 2 states, you don't lose the right at all. And in every other state where Washington kind of falls currently, you get it, but you have to maybe do some stuff, and you have to be off of your probation or your community supervision, and it kind of runs the gambit on like what you have to do to actually get that right to vote back. So why? Like, why do we have 6 million people that can't vote in this country? And I'm here to tell you that it is largely because we built a system that was designed to eliminate the ability of Black people to vote equitably in our system and access the ballot, right? So when did disenfranchisement become a thing? It became a thing after the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the 15th Amendment, right, which prohibited states and the federal government from not allowing you to vote based on race. So at the time, when we had the Civil War, we didn't really have a criminal system. I mean, we did, but it didn't use it the same way that we have with mass incarceration today, right? So what happened after, when people of color could vote, well, men, at the time, we saw states start to adapt laws that specifically targeted crimes that they thought that Black people were more likely to commit. And they had these slew of laws that historians often refer to as criminalizing Black life, right? It was this rapid expansion of the criminal system, and what we did simultaneously, and I don't say we weren't there, right, but as states did simultaneously, is they then also adopted laws that said, And if you get this criminal conviction, not only can you go to jail or prison, but you're also going to lose your right to participate in the democratic process. And we saw these two kind of go hand in hand. And we see that impact now, and we talk a lot about disparate impact and disproportional impact. But these laws were not like accidentally, this is what happened and this is the result. Like they were intentionally intended to eliminate voices of communities of color, right? And so in Virginia, for example, there was a senator who has a quote about talking about how their efforts that they were doing, including disenfranchisement. And he said that this plan will eliminate Black people as a political factor in the state in less than 5 years. Alabama, their goal was to establish white supremacy in the state, and that was including disenfranchisement. And these laws weren't, of course, limited to the South. We have 95% of states now, right? 48 states that have these laws in the books. And they just continue to expand up through 2008. And I say up through 2008 because that's now every state basically has them, so there's not room to grow that much. And we continue to see more and more restrictions, even when we have this incredible legislation like the Federal Voting Rights Act, and we eliminated the poll tax, and we're doing all these really great things, and then that's when the pushback comes. So we've seen, I think it's over between 2011 and 2015, don't quote me on those exact dates, we saw over 463 new voting restrictions happen. So the more that we, kind of try to expand the franchise and increase access, we also see a lot of efforts to suppress it. And we continue to see the impact today that is disproportionately impacting Black Americans. So we know that people that are incarcerated obviously are disproportionately people of color, but specifically we know that Black Americans of voting age are 4 times more likely to lose their voting rights as that of the rest of the population. And we also know that nationally, 1 in 13 Black adults can't vote, and in some states that is as many as 1 in 5. And in Washington, that it was true for us as well, up until 2009. So we had one of the worst and most regressive state policies and state legislation when it came to disenfranchisement. And as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of people aren't actually incarcerated. They're out, they're in the community, they're working, they're paying taxes, they're doing all of those things that we consider contributing to democracy, and they're doing that while they're incarcerated too. So that's one thing, that's kind of the bad news. I'm going to talk about the good news too. Another barrier that we have seen have a tremendous impact on communities of color is the type of election systems that we have, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of election systems in Washington are at-large systems. What does that mean? Why do we care? Shouldn't the majority win? Well, maybe, right? So, when we have an election system, and let's say you have a community that is 49% Latino, and then the rest, and it's 51% white, and the white people always are going to vote the same. That doesn't always happen, right? But let's say that that's the community that we live in, and then the Latino community is also voting even though they're very close, actually, in the percentage of the population that they occupy, but the percentage of the population in that city, 51% is going to get to elect all 9 or 7 or 6 city council members. They're going to get to decide all the policies for the city. And even if all 49% the Latino or Latina population voted, they would never actually get a meaningful opportunity unless some white people decided to vote along the similar lines. So we've seen that in many counties and cities. What happens is that it's white people running, it's white people winning elections, it's white people making the decisions for who gets funding in their schools, what infrastructure is invested in, right? What roads are being paved and what isn't. And that's a problem, right? That's not meaningful, equitable representation. So those are 2 issues that we have seen that are both important nationally but also locally. And I would love for both Dave and Rae Lynn to come up and talk about some of the barriers that they've seen. And then I'm going to talk about the good news and some of the progress that we've made and where I'm hoping that we're going to continue to go.
have their introductions and their bios, and she doesn't. So I'm just going to tell you who they are, and then they'll have a conversation with the mic that's there, and I'll introduce you, I'll share. So Rae Lynn Barden is the Administrative Services Coordinator for the Spokane Public Library. Previously worked for Spokane City Council as a legislative assistant. She's a Leadership Spokane graduate who received her Bachelor's in Communications and Master's in Public Administration from Eastern Washington University. Welcome, Rae Lynn. And then Dave Reynolds is the coordinator of Access for All Spokane and has been a disability rights advocate for 3 decades. Dave launched the first daily international disability rights news service, Inclusion Daily Express, in 1999, and managed its operations through 2016. That experience informed his efforts to link groups in his hometown into a grassroots coalition to make enduring change for accessibility and disability friendliness. So please welcome Dave Reynolds.
Yeah, so I was hoping that one or both of you could just kind of comment on some of the barriers to accessing voting that you've seen in your work, and maybe touch on like what you've been working on to address some of these. And I promise this won't be your only chance to talk with you. If you can't get it in, we can come back to me and come back to you too.
All right, well, this is a small world because Dave and I actually work on voter drives at the library, and we'll be hosting one in July for National Disability Voter Registration Week, the 3rd week of July. We're finalizing details for that right now. The library got involved with voter rights and access to voting about 3 years ago. It's a national push with every library where that director, John Kraska, I don't know if anyone's familiar with that organization, was contacting libraries across the country saying libraries are the perfect place to register people to vote because we're neutral, you can drop your ballots off there, and it would be just a great place to begin that. So that's where we started there. And we immediately saw a lot of barriers with that, especially with our community court population that comes down to the downtown library for court every Monday. And we partner with Center for Justice to start registering those folks to vote, telling them if they don't have an address where they can send their ballots to, reminding them they can drop it off at the library, but getting to the library is also a barrier as well. And felony convictions, seeing a lot of that, and barriers with the stamp, and mostly just drop off.
Well, in a way, it feels to me that one of our team members would be more appropriate for answering this question in a way. And I'm going to try to speak from her point of view just because she tells her story much better than either of us could. Her name is Deb, and she was well into her 50s before she was able to cast an independent private ballot. And that's because she's blind. And so she had to count on somebody else and hope and pray that that person would fill in the holes that mattered to her. We don't think about it. So we're up here, and yet in the most recent survey that was done by the CDC, they recognized that 26% of the population has a recognized disability, which in Spokane County is phenomenal. That's about 120,000 people in our county. And a lot of those are people that, when you look at them, you would not think of them having a disability. So we're not just talking about people that are blind, but we're also talking about people that have difficulty reading for one reason or another. It could be, of course, that English is not their first language. It could be that they have a learning disability or an intellectual disability and can't understand I have a hard time understanding. How many of you understand your ballots? Right? And so that's one of the biggest barriers we see is people not being able to do a ballot, even though they receive it, not being able to vote independently and to have their rights recognized in that regard. I work part rights guaranteed under the Constitution as every other one. A lot of times people are brought up and their parents have the understanding that since my child has an intellectual disability, they couldn't vote. There's no way they could. And so there's a lot of misunderstanding with that. Also, that has to do with guardianship and conservatorship, where a lot of times people, their rights to vote are taken away, sometimes by a well-meaning family member that does not understand that the person could do this if the court didn't take away the right to guardianship. So those are some of the areas that we see, particularly with intellectual disability. Now, Deb, she moved down here from Alaska, and I'm not sure how they do the voting up there, but it wasn't until she was introduced to something called an ADU, an accessible voting unit, which is a portable system where, and the ones in Spokane County, where you take the ballot you have, however that is, and you feed it into the system, and it will read to you out loud. You can put headphones on and listen to it that way. It's got the buttons on it are tactile, so you can feel which buttons to push, and then you can verify your vote before you tell it yes, and so forth. One of the biggest barriers we have in Spokane County is getting the word out to people that these things are available. I mean, you don't have to rely on someone else and trust somebody else to cast that independent vote. So I don't know if that
No, I think that was really helpful. Have you seen any exciting developments, or have there been things that you've been working on that you feel like have been helping to increase access for people with disabilities or otherwise, and having their voices heard?
I have, and it goes back actually to the 2000 Bush Gore election and the hanging chads and all of that. One thing that came out of that, and I don't know how many of you know this, but one thing that came out of that was something called the Help America Vote Act. And I believe it was 2002. And one provision of that was that all voting places, all polling places have to be accessible according to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. There are some places that have done a better job with that than others. I have been serving on the Spokane County Accessible Voting Advisory Committee starting in about 2011, and a group that I am affiliated now has taken those responsibilities. The Spokane County Accessible Community Advisory Committee, which I was going to talk about later on. But that group advises the county on a number of things, including accessible voting. One of the things that's been exciting in the progression here is that most of the polling places are accessible. We're working in that direction. That and the technology, the ADUs, are probably the most exciting thing.
We've seen some progress at the library. We had the League of Women Voters at our downtown branch for several months, and they had to stop their outreach weekly due to some scheduling conflicts, but they were seeing an increase of people saying, no, I am registered to vote, so that was exciting to see.
That's great. That's the Bush v. Gore election is also what helped, I think, get a lot of conversation about disenfranchisement on the map, actually, because of Florida is where a lot of people, it has one of the most regressive policies regarding who can vote if you have a felony conviction, and so there was if everyone that had a felony conviction could have voted, it would have probably dramatically changed that election. So that's interesting that it had so many different intersections. Are there any? So I'm going to bring you even more good news, but in the interim, I'd love. Do you have any? If people people are really excited about the work that you two are doing, any events coming up, or ways that people can get involved?
Well, in July, as I mentioned earlier, it begins July 15th. We will be participating in National Disability Voter Registration Week. We will have voter drives at our downtown, Shadle, and Southfield libraries, which are our three main libraries, and they hit most of the parts of the town. And we will be having a proclamation being read by maybe the mayor at the steam plant that Tuesday night, and we're working on a program with hopefully Senator Billig, Lucy Barefoot with the Secretary of State's office, who's hopefully going to be able to come over and join us and talk about filling out our voter guide and how to understand what the state puts out with that, because it is so confusing, as well as Janine Bertram. So stay tuned for that, and information will be on the library website.
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. It's exciting that Janine Bertram is coming. She's been a disability rights advocate going way back. Her husband, if you see the picture of George Bush, Papa Bush, signing the Americans with Disabilities Act, on one side is Justin Dart Jr., and the other side is Evan Kemp, who's Janine's husband, and they, as a pair, have been, he passed away 14 years ago, but have been strong warriors for disability rights, and he in particular was instrumental in getting the ADA passed. It'll be 29 years on July 26th.
That's great. Thank you both so much for all the amazing work that you do. So I also have come to bring some other exciting things that have been happening, right, in the last number of years that I've been at the ACLU, even before that. So as Michelle mentioned earlier, you know, we have a lot of really crummy disenfranchisement laws across the state, and we still have a lot more to do in Washington, but we've actually made a lot of really awesome progress. So in 2008, we passed this thing called the Voting Rights Restoration Act. And what did that do? It means that people can get their right to vote back once they are no longer incarcerated or under community supervision. Why is that exciting? Well, before the Washington Voting Rights Restoration Act happened, we actually had one of the most regressive state legislations in the country. I think we were number 12. And we had over 160,000 people, which was like 25% of people convicted who couldn't get, we had over 167,000 people who could not get their right to, or did not get their right to vote. And then we had nearly only 25% of people who actually had a conviction, like ever got that right to vote back, even though they actually had that right? But it was this messy system. You had to pay off your court fines and fees. You had to do all of this like affirmative work to get a court or somebody to like say, yes, sure, you can have that right to vote back. Nobody understood how the process worked. And so just nobody was doing it. And we had this really exciting bill that we worked on, that a lot of other really amazing organizations worked on, that changed that. And as a result, what we have right now is you automatically get the right to vote back. And you don't have to pay off all of these fines and fees and do this other like complicated, nuanced stuff. It just, you get that right to vote back once you're no longer incarcerated and under DOC supervision. And what happened after 2008 law passed, so in 2009, we had 150,000 people became eligible to vote automatically immediately. So that's really exciting. And this is the 10-year anniversary this year. So we're going to keep working on it. This year there was actually a number of pieces of legislation to keep expanding that and making it even easier for people to get that right to vote back. So there was legislation introduced so that people didn't have to wait until they were off community supervision, right? So people that are still living in the community, doing really awesome stuff, contributing really positively, and getting their lives back to, getting their lives, doing really awesome stuff. And it unfortunately didn't pass, but it was a really exciting development. We actually saw there was legislation that was passed that now requires certain notification provisions so that when people exit DOC or exit prison, that they actually know that they get that right to vote back. And we've been trying to do a number of public education efforts to get people to just know that that exists. I think there's still another barrier, right, to kind of go back to the bad news, right, is that people just, there's a lot of misinformation similarly and miscommunication about what those rights are. And so trying to just get people to know, like, yeah, you get that back. You don't have to do anything, you just have to register. So that's been really exciting. Last year, we passed the Washington Voting Rights Act, which is so incredible. We're one of a very few number of states in the entire country that has state protections of that nature. So I don't know how many people know about the Federal Voting Rights Act, but it makes sure that election systems don't dilute the vote of communities of color, and that they, that they're not discriminating. And so we now have even better state protections than we have at the federal level. And that will allow a number of cities who used to not be able to change their at-large election systems or thought they couldn't change them to change them. And we've already seen a number of cities start to kind of contemplate what would that look like and try to make their systems more equitable and accessible and meaningful for all communities. So that's super exciting. We even have things that are just as small this last year as automatic registration. Restoration, also exciting, but registration, right? We've seen a number of bills introduced, even those that aren't passing, that they're getting introduced, that people are talking about it, that this is a topic that people care about. That's super invigorating. We have cities that are doing really exciting stuff and trying to get people excited about voting and get to participate. We have Seattle that has passed democracy vouchers so that people can contribute to candidates and have that we're not just only the wealthy and the rich get to have a say in who is running and where their money goes. And we also have and also laws making it even easier for young people to vote, right? And access the ballot, not having to pay for postage and making that explicit. So I think there's a lot of really exciting things going on, and I just hope that everyone stays as excited about voting and engaged in trying to make this as accessible and open for everyone as possible. I think we're going to take questions, but I'm gonna wait. Oh, yes, we are.
Yes.
And I will just also say one thing that's very exciting for me personally about the Washington Voting Rights Act. So I'm a litigator, and I've had to litigate a lot of cases to protect people's right to vote. And this, I think it's exciting to see a lot of policies run to make my job easier.
Okay, so please join me in thanking Breanne and Rae Lynn and Dave